First thing I have to say, he has not addressed the issues which I raised in our press release, and that is, how is it that there has been a 40 million overspend in this year's budget? Now, what has happened here is the Chief Minister very conveniently tried to confuse matters and talk about the spend that occurred in COVID last year. What I'm talking about is, how is it, with a projection of 51 million deficit, that Sir Joe is saying, well, actually, there's going to be an additional 40 million spend on top. And we've seen the arguments between Sir Joe and the GGCA, where they're both blaming each other. And what I want to know is basically, how is it that the Chief Minister, as the Minister for Public Finance, has lost control of the situation? You cannot spend that much more money than was voted by Parliament unless something has gone wrong. Either the book itself was wrong to begin with, or something else has gone wrong. And I'm afraid to say that what the Chief Minister has put out in his press release is utter nonsense.
The reality is it's been a very unusual year, and it would have been hard to forecast how much keeping Gibraltar ticking would have cost. Isn't it a bit disingenuous to then say the estimate book can't be trusted?
No, not at all. Look, the bulk of the expenditure was already incurred last year, and it's already reflected in the book. And this year, we're talking about 21-22, there was already a provision for 67 million of COVID-related tail-end costs as such. What I found surprising is Sir Joe came out publicly and said, well, actually, before this book came to Parliament, they shaved off 75 million of potential expenditure. Then he comes back and says, well, actually, 40 million of that is coming back. And he basically throws his hands up in the air and says, well, this money has been spent over and above what was the government's budget, which was a deficit of 51 million. So which means the deficit, if Sir Joe is right, would come in at 91 million. And in a year which is difficult, I would have expected to see stronger controls. And ultimately, it's the Chief Minister, as Minister for Public Finance, who is responsible for that. And he cannot get away by putting up a smokescreen about COVID and COVID-related costs, unless what he's saying is that the overspend is entirely related to COVID. If so, well, let's see the numbers.
Well, a point made by the Chief Minister is that you're supporting the Gibraltar Community Care Action Group, which the Chief Minister claims is going to cost an extra £5 million a year, and at the same time asking the government to keep debt down.
Well, the first thing to say is that what we said is we would have had a freeze on this idea of the community officer scheme being disapplied to certain people. We would have a consultation period, and we would look at that in detail. We haven't talked any numbers. But if what the government is saying is true, if you were to actually look at the numbers for the community officer scheme in the community care account, they're talking about the full cost of 5 million of the entire scheme. So is it that the government are now suggesting that they're going to do away with the whole community officer scheme? It's all very easy to band around numbers, but I'm afraid the Chief Minister really has to come clean.